Welcome to the third episode of dairy cattle feed formulation. So in the first part and the second part, we introduced, the initial steps for feed formulation. And in this episode, I'm going to just, provide a summary for what we have learned so far. So from episode 1 and episode 2, we learned how to calculate total nutrient requirements of the animal based on the maintenance requirement, milk production, and body weight changes. And also we learned how to calculate dry matter intake, or in a plain language, how much the animal is going to eat. So if you are using more recent nutrient requirement tables, for example, from NRC 2021, in that case, you can just, extract the number for dry matter intake from the nutrient requirements tables, and you don't really need to calculate it. But I just, showed how to calculate dry matter intake in the second episode, so you can understand the concept. And if you remember, we calculated the dry matter intake based on the coefficients that have given in this table, based on the 4% FCM or fat-corrected milk. And at the end of the day, we saw for the scenario that we are formulating diet for dairy cow with 600 kilo body weight, 30 kilo milk production, 3.5% milk fat, and 300 grams per day body weight loss, we need to have 19 kilo dry matter intake. So in this step, we really need to determine the forage to concentrate ratio. We need to understand from that 19 kilo dry matter intake, how much forage we need to include and how much concentrate we need to include in the diet. So in one of my previous videos that I'm going to share the link with you up here, I talked about different methods of determining the forage to concentrate ratio. You can watch that video, but overall we discussed 5 methods, as you can see here. And I'm not going to dive more deeply into these steps as I explained in that video. But for this scenario, I'm going to choose the third method and go with this method to determine the dry matter intake of forage. So based on the third method, I need to use this formula. The coefficient, I call it K, you can call it whatever you want, times 0.65 times body weight divided by NDF of forage. So NDF, as you know, stands for neutral detergent fiber, which is the combination of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. So for the coefficient K, we have a range of numbers from 0.8 all the way to 1.2. So if you are formulating diet for high yielding cows, you can go with 0.8 or 0.9. For middle yielding cows, or let's say the mid lactation cows, you can go with a coefficient of 1. And if you are formulating for low producing cows, then you can use 1.1 or 1.2. So in our scenario, body weight is 600 kilos, and based on the nutrient composition of feed ingredients, we saw that our forage has 50% NDF. So that's why if I put 0.9 for early lactation period as a coefficient in this formula and multiply it by body weight and 0.65 divided by 50, which is the NDF level of the forage, it's gonna give me 7 kilo forage. So remember, we had 19 kilo dry matter intake. Now we know that from that 19 kilo, 7 kilo is gonna be forage and 12 kilo is gonna be concentrate. So far I have determined the amount of forage and concentrate in my diet based on dry matter, not based on as-fed. We will calculate the as-fed in the last step of feed formulation. So let's go and balance the forage part. In this scenario, I have decided to go with these ingredients that you can see here. And of course, it's the nutrient composition of these ingredients that I have extracted from the nutrient composition of feed ingredients from NRC. And for the forage part, you can see I'm gonna use alfalfa hay. So it has 15% protein. Of course, it is in full bloom section. If your forage is younger, you know, in that case, it's gonna have more protein. So you need to look at the age of alfalfa when you are harvesting it, you know, to feed your cattle. The second source of forage here is corn silage. So as you can see, it has just 35% dry matter. It's important. We need to keep this in mind when we are going to convert the amount of feed from dry matter basis to as-fed basis. I'm just emphasizing this, you know, you keep this in mind. And of course, for the concentrate part, I have decided to go with barley, corn, sunflower meal. CSM here is the short form of cottonseed meal, and we will have calcium carbonate and dicalcium phosphate and cattle premix that you can see here. So now we are going to balance the forage. So we said from 19 kilo feed dry matter intake, we're gonna have 7 kilo for forage and 12 kilo for concentrate, right? So here I'm going to just divide this 7 by 2. It means that I'm going to provide 50-50 alfalfa and corn silage as my forage section. So 3.5 kilos alfalfa, 3.5 kilos corn silage. It's gonna add up to 7 kilos forage. And here I'm just calculating the amount of energy, protein, calcium, and phosphorus that is provided by feeding, you know, this much forage, alfalfa and corn silage. So again, keep in mind, we are not going to feed our cattle with 3.5 kilos corn silage. This is the 3.5 kilos based on dry matter. But as I showed you, our corn silage has only 35% dry matter. And the rest of that, 65% is the moisture. We need to account for that moisture at the end of the day by converting the units from dry matter to as fed basis. So at the end of the day, we will see the actual amount of corn silage is much greater than 3.5 kilos that we are talking about based on dry matter. Anyways, so if you look here, we have total requirements for energy, protein, calcium, and phosphorus. So, for example, the total amount of energy is 28.93 megacalorie per day. If you remember from our previous episodes, so we calculated the total requirements here, right? And we have 2.8 kilos protein and also, the values for calcium and phosphorus. So we are just considering those total nutrient requirements. And here, as you can see, we're gonna calculate the amount of nutrients provided by our forage. So for NEL, I'm going to feed 3.5 kilos alfalfa, and the amount of energy in alfalfa is 1.2 megacalorie per kilogram. So if I multiply this by the amount of forage, it's gonna give me 4.2 megacalorie energy per day. Why per day? Because 3.5 kilos is the amount of forage, amount of alfalfa per day. That's why here, this amount of forage is gonna provide 4.2 megacalorie per day energy for our cattle. So that's why it is really important to pay close attention to the units, because then when we are formulating the concentrate, we're gonna convert the units. So please always pay attention to the units. So we said alfalfa has 15% protein. So what's the amount of protein in 3.5 kilos alfalfa? Just multiply the 3.5 by 15%. It's gonna give you half kilos, roughly half kilos protein. So again, half kilo per day protein coming from our alfalfa. It's the same idea for calcium and phosphorus. The only interesting thing you can see here is that I have divided calcium provided by alfalfa, which is the 0.0448 kilo per day, by 2. Why? Because in alfalfa, calcium is presented as oxalate, and we know its availability is low in the digestive system. That's why we need to account for lower availability due to the presence of oxalate that binds to calcium and it reduces the availability of calcium. That's why the amount of calcium coming from alfalfa actually is 0.0224 kilo per day. So then I'm going to do the same thing for corn silage. As you can see, our corn silage has 1.59 megacalorie energy, right, from this table. Corn silage, 1.59 megacalorie per 1 kilo. So we are going to provide 3.5 kilo corn silage. So it's gonna have 5.56 megacalorie energy per day. And it's the same idea for other nutrients. So you can see, to calculate the nutrients coming from each ingredient, We are just multiplying the amount of that ingredient by the amount of energy or nutrient in that ingredient. It's really simple. And here, it's the total amount of energy and nutrients coming from the forage. You can just add them up. 4.2 plus 5.56 is going to give you 9.76 megacalorie per day energy coming from forage, which is the alfalfa and corn silage. And same idea for other nutrients, just add them up. Now, by now we know how much nutrients are coming from our forage. And now we are going to calculate the shortfalls, which we need to provide by feeding the concentrate. How much concentrate? 12 kilos concentrate in this scenario. So total requirement minus the amount of nutrients that are provided by the forage. It gives us the shortfall of that nutrient. For example, for energy, the total energy requirement was 28.93. And our forage section is going to provide 9.76 megacalorie energy. So if I just take away 9.76 from 28.93, it's gonna give me 19.17 megacalorie per day shortfall of energy. That I need to provide this much of energy by feeding 12 kilos concentrate. It's the same idea for other nutrients as well. Just subtract the amount of nutrients provided by total forage from the total requirements to calculate the shortfalls. Now, 12 kilos concentrate should be able to provide this much of energy per day and this much of protein, calcium, and phosphorus per day. So, but in order to formulate the concentrate, we need to convert the nutrients units in the concentrate. So what we are going to do is just convert megacalorie per day to megacalorie per kilos and kilogram per day for protein, calcium, and phosphorus to %. Why? Because in nutrient composition of ingredients tables, as you can see, the unit for energy is based on megacalorie per kilo, and the unit for other nutrients is based on percentage. That's why we are just converting this. So shortfall for energy was 19.17, right, from here. So it was based on megacalorie per day. It should be provided, as I said, by feeding 12 kilos concentrate, right? So it's simple. We can just convert it to megacalorie per kilo. It means that how much energy should 1 kilo of concentrate have? So here you can just, use this ratio to calculate it. I'm going to provide 19.17 megacalorie energy by feeding 12 kilos concentrate. So how much energy should 1 kilo of concentrate have? So just cross multiplication and divide by 12. It's going to give you 1.6 megacalorie per kilogram. For others, it's the same idea. Again, shortfall for protein is 2.048 kilo per day. and I'm going to provide it by feeding 12 kilos concentrate. So if I convert it to percent, I need to put 100 here to say, okay, I need 2 kilos protein by feeding 12 kilos concentrate. What about in 100 kilos concentrate? How much protein should I have? So by that, I'm just converting it to percentage. And it's going to give me 17%. And it's the same idea for minerals as well. So now, by converting the units, I know I'm going to balance a concentrate with 1.6 megacalorie per kilo energy, 17% protein, 0.56% calcium, and 0.35% phosphorus. But remember, in our concentrate, as I showed you here in the feed ingredients list, we have some feed ingredients like barley, corn, sunflower meal, cottonseed meal. You can see they have energy and protein, but we have a part which we call it slack space. They are feed additives like calcium carbonate, dicalcium phosphate, cattle premix, enzymes that you are using in the diet, antibiotics, I don't know, different premixes. They do not have any energy or protein values, but they are still, part of the concentrate. And that's why we need to account for that. How? By increasing the amount of dietary energy and dietary protein, we can just account for slack space. So in this scenario, we assume that 3% of our concentrate will made up from those additives, that they don't have any energy or protein values like calcium phosphate, calcium carbonates, and other additives, right? So we need to add 3% to our on top of energy protein levels. Not for calcium phosphorus, no, because we are just dealing here with protein and energy issue. Because by adding those additives, which are the part of the concentrate, actually we are diluting the energy and protein in our concentrate, right? And we want to prevent that dilution. That's why first we are going to account for that dilution, for the slack space dilution, by adding 3% on top of energy and protein. So our concentrate was supposed to have 1.6 megacalorie per kilogram energy, but we are going to add 3% of that on top of the energy. So it's going to give us 1.65 megacalorie per kilogram energy. Same idea for protein, 17% was the expected one, but we're going to add 3% more. So it's going to give us 17.5% protein. Now we know our concentrate should have 1.65 megacalorie per kilogram energy, 17.5% protein. Just in the feed ingredients parts. But after adding the feed additives to our concentrate, which was calcium carbonate and dicalcium phosphate and cattle premix, then they are going to dilute the level of energy and protein, and we will reach the normal scenario, which was 1.6 megacalorie energy and 17% protein. So that's it for this episode. And in the next episode, we are going to formulate our concentrate. Please let me know if you have any question down there in the comments. And I'm waiting for the final episode of dairy cow feed formulation. Have fun wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.